Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are connecting from. Thank you for attending the webinar today, and I would like to welcome you all to the Citrix Ready Technical Webinar Series, where we showcase how Citrix and our partners have integrated to deliver the valuable products and solutions to common problems faced by our customers today. I am Manjunatha Gali. I'm your host for the evening, and today we have Goliath Technologies with us. Presenting today, we have Raja Jadeja, Vice President of Product Management from Goliath Technologies. Moving on, the agenda for the day is we'll start with the introduction of Citrix Ready program and our partner Goliath Technologies. Our speaker Raja Jadeja will walk us through the product overview and demonstration, and before the end of the webinar we will have the questions and answer session to answer all your queries. To introduce Citrix Ready, Citrix Ready is an end-to-end technology partner program that showcases and recommends third-party products, solutions, and services that demonstrates compatibility with Citrix products. Customers can quickly and easily find solutions recommended by Citrix in the Citrix Ready Exchange Marketplace by navigating to citrix.com/ready. For more information on the Citrix Ready program, you can navigate to citrix.com/partnerprograms/citrixready. Next slide, please. And to introduce about Goliath Technologies. Goliath Technologies are founded in the year 2010 and are Citrix Ready partners since 2011. Goliath Technologies have 400 plus customers worldwide, and they are committed to deliver a comprehensive set of IT operations management softwares. Goliath Technologies have developed 3 major software for proactive IT operations and have successfully verified with Citrix Ready. To name them, Goliath Performance Monitor software. This software provides complete support for monitoring the virtual servers, virtual desktops, and hybrid cloud environments. Goliath for NetScaler. This software combined with our Citrix NetScaler allows us to view real-time dashboards, live reports, and run historical analysis for management and many more. And finally, the most commented software, Goliath Logon Simulator for Citrix XenApp and XenDesktop. Goliath Logon Simulator is a proactive end-user experience software that finds the root cause of Citrix logon issues and resolves them before end-user complain. We are here today to see the detailed overview and demonstration of this software. Before we start the presentation, if you have any questions during the webinar, please use the question panel on the right-hand side, and we'll take your questions in the question and answer session. Without any further delay, please welcome our speaker Raja Jadeja to walk us through the product overview and demonstration. Hi Raja, what do you know?
Thank you, Manju. Appreciate it. So I just have a couple slides before we actually get into the technology itself to give you a quick idea of how we position the technologies, how the technology actually works, the Goliath Logon Simulator, and then we'll get right into the use case and the demonstration itself. Now, here at Goliath Technologies, we often field calls and get customers calling in with questions and problems that they're running into in their environment. They know the problem is in Citrix, but they have no evidence to actually prove that. And that's exactly what we do. We actually often call ourselves the Citrix Administrator's Defense Team, because when it comes down to getting to the root cause of issues, more often than not, it's not Citrix that's the problem, it's actually something else in the IT infrastructure. And so we provide that objective evidence. And that's a little bit what we're going to talk about today. So when we talk to customers, they usually tell us that they want to achieve proactive IT operations. Now to do that, they need to be able to anticipate, troubleshoot, resolve, and ultimately prevent IT operations issues. So if you look at each of these boxes, they contain elements or functionality within the product which help to maintain each of those. Today we're going to talk about the Logon Simulator coupled with other end-user functionality that gives our customers the ability to anticipate issues before they happen. Now, as Manju mentioned, we've been providing proactive IT management for over a decade. Every software company has one of these, but what you should take away from this slide is that we have technologies that scale to some of the largest organizations in the world, but it also has an ease of use and price profile that allows the software to be utilized by even small to medium-sized businesses. So let's talk about the Logon Simulator. Now, many of our XenApp and XenDesktop administrators will sit back and say, we're having problems predicting logon experience, preempting end-user complaints, or determining the root cause, the true root cause of failure and slowness. Now we say the true root cause because so many times the actual root cause is a perceived issue with Citrix. So Citrix is not the problem, but they don't have the ability to avoid issues or prove that it's not. Now, those same administrators go out in the marketplace, they look for a solution, and they come up with a couple of challenges. One is that there's nothing out there that allows them to validate the Citrix delivery infrastructure, the whole infrastructure, working together in concert. NetScalers, applications, and supporting IT infrastructure. There's no way to test remote locations, analyze logon duration, and alert in real time if there is a logon issue or slowness, and again, determine root cause. The key thing is that there is not one product in the marketplace that gives them the ability to do this until now. So we brought out the Logon Simulator to be able to help organizations solve these problems with one technology. The Logon Simulator will initiate a real Citrix session with simulated users, local or remote. The exact same steps a user would actually go through to log on to a Citrix session. Therefore, it exercises the entire Citrix delivery infrastructure. We provide, if there is an issue of failure or slowness in the session timer logon, real-time alerts on failure and slowness, but also on thresholds. So you can actually set buffers around performance to alert you prior to an issue related to slowness or logon times. We give you the ability to determine root cause analysis. We give you reports and dashboards that you can actually trend over time to see how logon duration maps either to geography, time zone, etc. Now you can purchase a Logon Simulator either standalone or fully integrated into a performance monitoring technology. Now I want to get right into the demonstration itself, take a look at how the technology is operating, and we usually do this from the perspective of an actual scenario. And so we had a customer that actually reached out to us, and they were receiving complaints about logon failures and slowness first thing in the morning. And so what they wanted was to be able to troubleshoot the immediate issues, but also be able to leverage our technology, the Logon Simulator, to proactively determine logon issues before end users were actually impacted. So what exactly was happening was, these administrators, they were actually located in a different time zone from their actual end users themselves. In fact, the administrators were located in Texas at the bottom there. They had a data center up near Chicago, and then users would start signing in first thing in the morning, generally before they were even awake, on the East Coast from Massachusetts or New York, as well as down in the Florida region. Now, some of those users, as you can see in the top right, would actually have some slowness issues with logging in, and so it would just take a long time. There'd be delays. They couldn't figure out what was causing it. And then down in Florida, they'd actually have some problems with users not being able to log in whatsoever. Now, this problem got compounded as the rest of the companies started to get awake and get into the actual environment, into the office, and start logging in. So by the time they got to San Francisco and their offices in Seattle, they had other users that were running into problems, and by the time they walked in the door, they were already facing a ticket queue length of about 100 tickets or more. And not being able to just get ahead of the problem. Sometimes those issues they found to be really simple fixes, but they couldn't get ahead of them very quickly and prevent them because they didn't know the problem was going to exist. And that's really where the Logon Simulator fits in. So before we actually get into the demonstration itself, I did want to take just 2 slides to cover really quickly how the technology operates, and then we'll actually see it in action in the product itself. So we mentioned this a little bit earlier on. We actually simulate the exact process that an end user goes through. So if you take a look on the left-hand side, we actually simulate the process starting at the endpoint. And that could be located in Florida and New York where the users were having problems. So we can actually deploy the technology to those remote locations to simulate the exact process those end users go through, sign in through the NetScaler, if that's what you have in front of it, hitting the web interface or storefront, and then getting brokered off into a session. Following that entire process to ensure it's successful. So we really follow the entire connection path that it takes for a user to go through that process. If it's successful, it'll give you an idea of how long it's taken, or if there's a problem like you see as we move to the right-hand side of the slide, where the problem is actually taking place. Is it profile loading? Is it personalization? And then we can even give you visibility into the root cause of that. Tracking each of those sessions that are taking place, some of the core metrics around it so you have good data points, and then that root cause. In this case, if it was Active Directory that was causing a problem, let's say registry or group policy issues, we can identify that and alert you to that as well. Now, what allows us to give you that deep insight in terms of session behavior and the underlying infrastructure is that we have integrations, certainly into Citrix XenApp and XenDesktop, API-based integrations to provide visibility into performance and session-based data. So if you look at the bottom left-hand side and work your way to the right, we have specific data and information we can get around sessions and the performance of XenDesktop. around XenApp itself, getting key performance metrics around it, and then on the far right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner, the actual underlying infrastructure, tying into VMware and XenServer, your hypervisor infrastructure, key components in the surrounding it around Active Directory, SQL, IIS, and then we bring all that data back up into a single dashboard. So we bring all that information together into one place, and bringing that data together in that way allows us to give you that root cause analysis. So let's actually go into the technology itself to take a look at how the performance actually, how the Goliath Logon Simulator functions, giving you an idea of how it actually performs. And so in a few seconds here, you should see on your screen Goliath Logon Simulator. Now, on the dashboard itself that we're looking at, this is actually our Logon Simulator dashboard. And from here, we have a quick idea about the sessions that are taking place in terms of how the performance is taking place, and getting an idea, if you look on the left-hand side, all the simulations we're launching, applications or desktops, are they successful or not? You can see very quickly the applications that are listed, and then red if it's failed, green if it's successful. And then as we make our way across, you have some other data points. So let's take the use case, starting off with a customer who's having a problem with slowness issues or problems with failures taking place. This is the dashboard that we would go to start actually investigating that condition. And so this is breaking that information down as we look across. Now, before we get too deep into it, I'm actually going to bring up the simulator that's running at this point in time so you can see how it actually functions. And so I've brought up on the page the actual Logon Simulator in action. And you can see right now on the screen the web interface has come up. It's actually signing in. It's going to launch an application and have it come up on the screen, or attempt to do so. This is actually the simulation in action as we speak. Now, this is an important process to go through, creating an actual Citrix session. Not just launching an application against the server, but going through the entire process to launch the session itself. The reason why that's important is that when we've talked to our customers, more often than not, if you can look at the individual servers, the components, they might look fine and great. But when they're asked to work together to actually launch a session, that's where all the other dependencies might fit in, where Active Directory and authentication could be a problem, third-party secondary authentication tools could fit into an issue, or communication pieces in the underlying network can start causing problems and preventing logons from succeeding. And so this actually tests that entire network, forces all those components to work together, not just looking at the Citrix component, but the underlying infrastructure that allows delivery of the applications to take place. And that's how we can really start getting ahead of these problems and finding out what's causing those problems with users that can't get into sessions, or it seems to be going very slow. So when we go back over to the actual dashboard here on the display, we can start really investigating, knowing that we have all the data that we need to understand where the problem is coming from. And so as we look across here from the left-hand side of the applications we're running simulations for, we can see which address we're signing into. So for instance, if you're either a Citrix service provider or a large organization that has multiple points of entry, web interfaces and storefronts for different users, maybe for vendors versus internal folks, we can see where we're actually accessing it with. Is it the NetScaler address? Is it directly to the web interface? To see how they're succeeding or failing. Moving over, we can see different users. And so a lot of our customers might have this set up because they have different group policy profiles for, say, administrators versus executives versus operations folks. So we can test different users and then where it's coming in from. And so then as we work our way all the way over to the right-hand side, we can see the overall availability of those applications and then how long it takes to sign in, or if it succeeded or failed. And so if we go back to our use case of those users that were having problems with actually signing in, couldn't actually do so whatsoever, this is a great way to get some perspective as to whether or not the problem was trending on the basis of their location or just in those users. Sometimes users would call in, especially first thing in the morning, and say, hey, no one can get into the environment. Now, as an administrator, as a support individual, you start wondering, is there something that's location-specific? Is it affecting the entire farm that's causing these problems? This information gives you objective evidence that lets you get an idea of just how deep this problem is. So you can make a determination, looking at the source here, as to is this a problem that's affecting every single application launched from New York or Florida? And is this a problem that's actually affecting maybe users of a certain type? Letting you narrow down more specifically where the issue is coming from. And so when we start looking at the failures that took place, we can actually get a little bit further down the road here. So when we look at some of the simulations that are occurring, we can actually hover on it to start investigating, right? So now I get some quick breakdown of what's actually happening as we go through the process. You can see as it works its way through that it found the page, it loaded it up, It found that there was a NetScaler that was as part of the process of actually signing in. Scraped the page to find any kind of authentication information that was needed, passed through all the credentials that we gave it, clicked the Logon button, and it started the process of bringing up the apps themselves. And so as we start making our way through the list, we can start identifying what's on the screen. So it starts actually enumerating, one, it confirms success in logging in, and then it starts enumerating all the applications the user has access to. So I have all the different apps listing down here to the bottom. I can see how they're all loading up. And then it starts looking through them, but it doesn't find the application it's looking for. It tries one more time to find it, and then at that point, we get all the way to the bottom, and it fails to do so. Now, this is great detailed information. Running the Logon Simulator allows us to validate just a couple key parts of that process. One, were they able to actually authenticate, and how long did it take to do so? We have all the timings here to explain how long that process took. Then, making our way down, it starts enumerating all the applications. How long did enumeration take? Every single step is actually timed, so we can see that information as well as the success of bringing it up. And then at the end, we can actually go to launch to simulate the actual application itself and see how that operates. So let's actually take a look at one more of these. So if the application fails to launch, and you can see in this case, we went through the process of signing in, went through the process of actually bringing up the apps themselves, then actually clicked on the application, and then waited for it to appear. Now, in this case, it didn't actually succeed in launching. And so we know that the application was found and just didn't actually launch and come up. And we get alerted to that information, too. So for those users, like we had in Florida, where it didn't succeed, this is what we use to actually help them identify what was causing simulations to fail or launches actually fail for those users, narrowing it down to where in the process it was failing out. In the case of the customer, they actually had a problem with applications not appearing on the page itself. And that's also part of the problem, right? Users calling them saying, hey, Citrix is not working, I can't launch my application, but they didn't know if it was not appearing, or they actually clicked on it and then it didn't succeed to launch. This gave them that objective evidence. So this is critical information to help them with that process. Now, let's move on from there and talk a little bit about those users that are having slowness issues with signing in, right? They can succeed in actually launching the application, but it's a little bit slow to do so. What we're looking on this page also gives us insight into that. So if we look to the bottom half of the applications that are being launched, we can see all those apps that are launching and executing in real time, and then we can see how long it's actually taking. Now this is great because I can compare then on location basis, on an application basis, see if there's some consistency for either one. Maybe all apps coming from one location are slow, or maybe all the same type of application, regardless of where they're being launched from, are all slow. This gives us that visibility to understand it. And again, as we drill into this, I can see where that slowness might be coming from. I can see the overall initial authentication process. How long did it take to actually get authenticated into the environment? The breakdown of all the applications and enumerating them. And then finally, at the bottom here, we can see from the point of actually clicking on the session itself, right? Because if you look here, we can actually see clicking on the application and then it coming up and seeing how long it took, and then it succeeded to do so. So I can see the entire process and all this interval timestamps from the moment of click to see how long the simulation took. So this is a great way to start finding out what's happening. Now, sometimes seeing those timings is not enough. You need to be able to go a little bit closer to find out what's actually taking place. And that was the case of our customers that had those slow logins coming in from New York. They need to get a little bit closer because this gave them the evidence of that, hey, it is slow, but they didn't know where it was slow. So when we go over to our XenApp and XenDesktop session display, we can start breaking down all the applications that are being launched, those simulated as well as those in real time. We see all the sessions that are occurring. We can see the user count being used. You can see the simulation users here. You can see where there's actually coming in from, the subnet of where it's being launched from, so those accounts that are maybe coming in from, in this case, New York versus Texas versus Seattle, the logon time for all those sessions, and then how they're performing as well at the same time. So let's actually look into one of these and see how long it actually took to launch. So all we have to do is click on the session itself, and if you need to, you can always go to the bottom and actually search for it. Just click on this, put in the user account name, whether it's a simulation user or a real user account, and then click into it and click on the session logon time. This brings up a quick breakdown of all the logon stages that it went through. Overall logon time, and then how long it took for the ICA file to be brought down, authentication to take place, group policy to process, profile loading, script execution if you have it, and then the actual display, the actual application appear in an interactive way that you can actually start engaging the application itself. which is great information, great detail to be able to see exactly what stage it's actually breaking down and taking time in. Now, we can actually go one step further than that, and this is important for our customers. We were able to expand that and look a little bit further to see which domain controller it connected to, how long did the LDAP bind take place, the group policy that was actually brought up, and how long it took to process it. This will let you break down every single policy that gets called up by that user, each script that gets loaded up, the files that are getting synchronized, and then other details around timing. What's also really useful is at the bottom, we can also break down what the connection speed is at the time that the connection was negotiated. And so this is a quick way to get that visibility and understand what's happening. In the case of our customer, this was useful to understand exactly what was happening. In their case, users were actually going in and getting access to the wrong domain controller. Instead of authenticating locally, they were authenticating at a completely different site, slowing down the entire process. And that was really important for the customer to understand exactly what was causing the slowness issues. Now, at the same time, when you start seeing the sessions that are taking place, this is really useful because in the case of successful logons and understanding if they're slow or not, we can also provide a perspective as to the performance of the session itself. And so when we start looking at it and understanding slowness issues or just how it's performing overall, you can take the IT latency is a great indicator to what's happening, especially because when you start looking to understand if the user behavior and what they're doing inside the session could be causing problems, we can give us a great start to that process. So we can certainly look at the ICA latency and then open up the ICA channel here to see what the actual execution is like inside of the session itself. How has my user's activity and connection changed, right? So if the users are coming in over an access point, or over a hotspot, you can see how that connection has been shuffling over time and see how that might be affecting the performance. And you can see that activity. You can see what kind of bandwidth they're using. So is there a certain type of activity they're using that's using up a lot of, say, video bandwidth or audio bandwidth, how their latency ideally has changed with relation to it, and then overall with the session that's been taking place, how much of it is related to one type of channel bandwidth versus another, what type of activity. Now this is a great way to say, okay, this is a complexion of my user session. But if you want to get down to find out what it is that they're really doing that's actually causing the bandwidth to go high, we can go a little bit further than that. Try it and actually take this back to the actual user themselves and say, okay, what were they doing, right? So we can click into the application itself and then bring up the sessions to see what they're actually doing inside of it. And so now we can see a couple different things. For one thing, we can see all the applications are running. And in fact, as we start looking at the list, we can see a couple things. It looks like this user is a big fan of Mark Templeton and look at the Citrix Synergy video and has been streaming that audio the whole time, streaming the video the whole time. And that's what's chewing up a lot of the bandwidth and memory usage. So now we know exactly where the problem is coming from. We saw all that high bandwidth usage, and now we know what they were specifically doing. And they're on YouTube. So you can see all that information right here, and Firefox is chewing it up. Great way to get that detail. In fact, we can go one step further if you have to. I mean, this is all the evidence you need, right? How do you get ahead of problems of streaming media, right? Now you know when they're doing it and what they're actually watching. And then go down to the process level, if you have to, define some other metrics. And you can see, for instance, that Firefox is using over a core of CPU and memory utilization. Getting ahead of these bad user behavior issues that can start reflecting poorly on the performance of your systems, this is the detail you need to start getting ahead of those problems. So taking a step back now, let's go back to that original use case of our users. All these different metrics, this evidence that we brought together is core to being able to find out what was causing those issues and problems taking place. And so when we come back to look at what was happening after they deployed the Logon Simulator, after they made the changes to identify the domain controller problems affecting slowness, the enumeration problems, the policies that affected the applications for appearing for those users. The new 8:30 a.m. looked a little bit like this. No red lines, no yellow lines indicating problems. Every user, when they sign in the morning, were able to successfully log in and get access to the application. So when the IT administrator arrived at the office, they didn't have a queue 200 tickets deep that they had to wade through and address problems. They weren't showing up already frantically trying to get ahead of problems. Everything was great. So this is the new 8:30 a.m. And this is all because we deployed the Logon Simulator to start simulating sessions at each of those sessions, at each of those locations at 6:30 a.m. before users signed on. So in the case when problems did arise, because let's be honest, sometimes there's a problem that takes place, maybe someone changes something in Active Directory that you don't know about. The simulator was finding those problems ahead of time, letting the IT administrators know about it so they can sign in before users did, fix the problem so no one even knew there was an issue that would have taken place. So a couple of our customers, you can see their screens, their profiles on the page itself, have leveraged the technology in this manner to start getting ahead of problems, dropping support tickets, getting more effective, meeting their SLAs more efficiently, and you can see a couple of those on the page right now. So Manju, over the last couple minutes, we took a look at the Logon Simulator, how our customers have leveraged it to identify and fix specific issues, and also get more proactive in their environment, identifying the root cause of some of the Logon failures, as well as slowness that's taking place as well, being able to tie that back effectively to root causes in the underlying infrastructure instead of having Citrix get blamed. Manju, do you?
Yep. Thank you, Raja.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Raja. That was a wonderful overview and presentation. So now let's move on to the question and answer sessions. So I'm just looking at the questions. We have got over a dozen of questions today. So the first one is, does the Logon Simulator support secondary authentication or two-factor authentication?
We absolutely do. We have a lot of customers, both in government as well as hospitals and healthcare, where they have those as requirements, of course, front-ending and allowing access to the Citrix environment. So we certainly support that to ensure when we go to simulate those sessions, we're truly matching what users encounter and face.
Great. So the next one looks to be an easier one for you. So what versions of XenApp and XenDesktop does the Logon Simulator support?
We are Citrix certified, Citrix Ready certified, all the way up through 7.6. We do support 4.5 of XenApp through 7.6 with the Logon Simulator, as well as XenDesktop 5.5 through 7.6 as well.
Great. So the next question is there any limitations to the number of applications that the Logon Simulator can test?
No, there's no limitation. So if you have, whether it's 5 or 500 apps, we can launch those different applications for you. Again, a lot of customers have users that when they sign in, they're launching, Office, all the Office apps, maybe a couple business apps like SAP. If that's what your users do, we can launch those applications as well to make sure that they all succeed and not just one of them.
Great. So moving to the next question, does the Logon Simulator work remotely and locally?
Absolutely. Again, one of the core capabilities of the technology and what customers needed was to be able to have it mimic users signing in, not just locally, but also from remote branch offices or from home or other locations, and the Logon Simulator supports that as well. We have a simplified architecture that allows us to accomplish this. It's facilitated through our Logon Simulator intelligent agent, which can go out to a remote site to initiate the logons from all the places that users will be signing in from.
Great. So the next question is, does the Logon Simulator only go through the NetScaler?
We certainly support it going through the NetScaler, but if we have another load balancer like F5, or if you have users connecting directly to web interface or storefront or through the Citrix Access Gateway, we support that configuration as well. It does not require the NetScaler to be in front of it for this Logon Simulator to work. We simply support it as well.
Cool, great. So the next question is, does the Logon Simulator alert in real time?
Absolutely. So we can alert you through email notifications. We can send text messages so that you get notified the moment that an application becomes unavailable or a desktop becomes unavailable or cannot be launched more precisely. So that way there's no delays in this process.
Okay. And going to the next question, can you run historical reports to trend logon experience?
Absolutely. A lot of our customers are looking for reporting, not just a trend logon experience, but for accurate representation from management about are they hitting their SLAs, are their application desktops truly available. This gives our reporting allows our customers to give a much more accurate representation of application and Citrix availability, allowing them to ensure that they are meeting those SLAs and that management does have a clear picture of overall availability. So yes.
Okay. Next question is about the alerts. How will I receive the real-time alerts? For example, is it via ticketing system or help desk?
That's a great question. So we support a number of different methodologies for delivering notifications and alert notifications. Certainly email and text message, but a lot of our customers need these messages to come to a centralized methodology. So if you have a ticketing system in place, if you have a help desk system in place, we can send our notifications to those service desks so that it becomes aggregated, pulled together, so we can send the information up to those tools as well.
Okay. Next question is about performance monitoring. The question is the Logon Simulator fully integrated into the performance monitoring?
Absolutely. This allows you to get some additional information, get down to root cause, getting the full picture, not just of the simulations that are taking place, their success and failure of how they're performing, but also to be able to get down to the root cause of issues, too, in the underlying infrastructure.
Okay. All right. And the next question is about, does Logon Simulator replace XSite?
We know that the Logon Simulator, or the equivalent technology in XSite has been deprecated over time. So we've built in the functionality to support and bridge that gap. So we provide all the same functionality through our technology as well.
Okay. And the next question is, does F5 work with the Logon Simulator?
So the Logon Simulator, F5 certainly does support. We do support F5 with the Logon Simulator. We know we have a lot of customers out there that are using other load balancing technologies. We certainly support F5 as well, yes.
Okay. The next question looks to be an interesting one. Can we feed the data generated by Logon Simulator into Splunk?
Absolutely. One of our approaches is not just to either replace other technologies or sit as a silo by itself from the monitoring perspective, but to coexist with other technologies that might be placed in customer environments. Whether it's Splunk or other tool sets that you might have like CA or HP OpenView, we can take our information and pass it forward into those technologies so you have a unified place of understanding the current availability, performance information, and analysis. So we can send information on from the Logon Simulator about success, failures, all those details right into Splunk as well.
Okay, right. Next question is about the integration. So question is, what about integration with other third-party monitoring tools as e.g. Innovations or SCOM? Does it send traps SNMP to these tools or any directly integrations?
That's a great question. So we support communications and data coming either from them, so we can take data from e.g. Innovations or SCOM or other tools, or we can send information to e.g. Innovations or SCOM. We certainly can send information via SNMP. We also support syslog and other methodologies of doing that. And again, both ways. We can take it from them or send it to those tools so we can actually fully support it, as well as API-based integrations too.
Okay, great. Next question is about the licensing. So question is, what is the licensing method? And do you have any additions? And is it concurrent per user or per device?
It's a great question. So we have both standalone pricing as well as integrated with the rest of our technologies. That way we can actually, you can choose which way is most effective for you. We also have enterprise licensing that allows you to price this on a per user basis. That way it gives you the full flexibility of the technology, deploy it as you need to, as you wish to in the full environment, or you can actually price it on the basis of where you're learning the simulations from. So if you need to deploy the technology to run it locally or to a couple different locations, you can price it on that basis as well. Generally, when we talk to our customers, we identify a scenario that fits best for them from a price perspective, as well as the flexibility that they require in the technology to find the best price possible.
Okay, and we have a couple of more questions. Do you install agents on Citrix servers, Active Directory server, or any other related servers that's being monitored?
For the simulation itself to operate, We don't need to deploy the technology into those other servers and systems. However, if you want to find root cause analysis, at that point we can deploy our agent. Now this agent, I should point out, we call it our intelligent agent, not just because it's got a great name when we do, but because this agent is extremely lightweight. It uses about 0.1% of a CPU resource, runs around 50 megs of RAM on those systems when it's operating, runs as a single instance, there's not multiple processes taking place, and it's built in C++. And I mention that simply because it means that there's no effect to other applications that might be running on those systems. Furthermore, it's gold image ready. So you can put right into gold image, and it will automatically show up under XenApp servers. Doesn't require any kind of special scripting around it. When we deploy it, doesn't require any kind of reboot, so it helps with the change management process. Deploying that agent provides additional visibility. It provides additional insight to the root cause.
Great. We have one last question. The question is the Logon Simulator creating real Citrix sessions with referenceable matrices?
Absolutely. And this is a key point. Because we're creating actual full Citrix sessions, as we can see it going through that process, and instead of just simply appearing on the XenApp servers and nothing being captured in terms of how it's performing, we can truly get some great metrics and data points around how the information is how it's actually breaking down along the way. So that means that we can break down those authentication times, the group policy times, the profile times, allows us to get full data points around how long it's taking to launch those sessions. And then as we saw toward the end there, we can see how the actual session is performing itself and then peer into it. If it wasn't a full Citrix session, you wouldn't be able to actually accomplish that and get all those data points.
Great. We'll wait for a couple of minutes to see if we get some more questions.
Yeah, and Manju, I know there's a couple other questions out there for more specifics around pricing. Just at a high level, the pricing is per simulated user or per XenApp server. In fact, we actually make it and we post it on our website. So if you guys go out to GoliathTechnologies.com, and in the top right-hand corner of the page, you can click on the pricing. That'll bring up a full sheet that breaks down the pricing with all the details as well that you need. And certainly if you want to give us a call, we can help you out with that too.
Yeah, well said. All right, we don't see any further questions. I think we answered almost all the questions that we got in the question panel. And with that said, we are about to end the webinar. Thank you for all today. Thank you for attending today's webinar in the Citrix Ready Technical Webinar Series. This concludes our broadcast. Thank you.